Greetings, friends. So the Canadian YouTuber and poster on X, Endeavour, who's in the sphere of Morgoth and other people I follow, made the post recently on X about something Alexander Dugin, the Russian philosopher, said in a conference from which I gather involved officials from various countries, including India. And Dugin said something, I'm paraphrasing because the translation was inadequate, but there was a subtext. But he said something essentially to the effect of, "It is my pleasure to give the floor to the representative of the great Indian state and civilization, which is already a pole in the multipolar world, just like Russia." And that statement on its face is fine. It's obvious, it's true. It's a multipolar world. This is one of the ideas that Dugin is celebrated for, but I don't even see what's so complicated about it. Anyone can see that it's a multipolar world. I don't know why that's one of his genius ideas. And obviously, if it's not the United States versus the Soviet Union, then it was the United States only. Then right now we can see that it's United States, China, Iran, India, arguably Brazil. There's more than a few players on the economic and political stage. Russia's one of these poles, and India is a pole, and India is a great civilization. Now, Endeavour, his take was, based on this statement above by Dugin, it's fair to say Dugin is one of the worst right-wing political thinkers on the planet. So that's what Endeavour had to say. But people were pointing out in the comments that Dugin is not a right-wing thinker. I'm not an authority on the matter, but like I said, he's sort of a postmodernist from what I've gathered. But as we already saw, Dugin in that instance wasn't speaking incorrectly. So I thought I would take the opportunity to talk a bit about India and why it's okay to recognize truths about other civilizations. Like on the left, they celebrate other cultures for the sake of them being foreign, which is unhealthy and perverse. Why would you celebrate these other cultures and not your own? There's something wrong with that. But on the other hand, you get this reaction on the right where they might say very derogatory things. These countries are shitholes, which in the right context, you can use that language. Indeed, a lot of the world is a shithole. But it becomes this one-dimensional view. We have to get our tribe to hate the other group. I understand that's reality. I'm not denying that. I guess that's inevitable to an extent. But I think that we can try to be a little more mature. Obviously, Indians need to stay in India. There's way too many of them here. There probably shouldn't have been many of them allowed in here at all. But when it comes to speaking of a great civilization, you can think either in terms of morality, like are they ethically good? Do they set an ideal Christian example morally? It's not a Christian civilization. Or you can think of greatness in terms of huge significance, which I think is the way Dugin intended it. We think of historical figures like Alexander the Great, Cyrus the Great, Darius the Great of Persian history, Alfred the Great, who saved England, Peter the Great. So empire builders, military leaders, planners, adventurers, men who accomplished great things and probably did many brutal things. Many of those who have the title the Great affixed to their legacy also did some dark, terrible things. Yet they're regarded as great, of huge significance. So let's not forget that's obviously the case with India. And we're not going to be liberals and say that all peoples are great. No, there's a hierarchy in the world. There haven't been that many great civilizations. The greatest was Byzantium, in my opinion. Lasted about 1,000 years. Indian civilization is very old too, and they say that the religion did actually change over the hundreds of years. It's not that the Hinduism isn't the same as it used to be, but there has been people living there with shared customs, some organic development going on for quite a while. Now, no length of time doesn't make something morally good or necessarily even advanced. There have been primitive cannibals that have been doing their thing for hundreds or thousands of years. Doesn't make them ethically advanced. Doesn't make them high culture or a great civilization. What I'm saying is that India achieved writing, art forms, Obviously, agriculture from the beginning, high population density urban centers, division of labor into classes or caste systems, which there's a good side to the caste system, ideally, and there's obviously the negative side, which doesn't blend what Christian ideal is. They have the opposite idea with the untouchables. They don't even want to be touched by a person's shadow. They think that they're polluted by that. That's very unchristian. That couldn't blend with Christianity. That's morally wrong. That's a tarnish on their civilization. But it's still a great civilization. Like, a better civilization, in my view, is a Christian civilization, obviously. But that doesn't mean you can't describe other people's as great. And keeping in mind, this was like an event where Dugan was doing a diplomatic and polite thing and passing the mic or passing the audience's attention to another person, politely describing them as belonging to a great civilization. So I think Endeavour was more just like didn't like Dugan, and I think he was just trying to use this as an opportunity to attack Dugan, which is fine. So there was some pushback to Endeavour, and he doubled down. He said, anyone who describes India as a great civilization should never be listened to on any subject ever again. So he's emphatically doubling down. And again, like, he knows it's a winning strategy. We see what Indians are like here in the West is bad. Many of them are perverts. The intelligence, the disorganization, the dirtiness. We see even the ethnic feuds between like Sikhs or Khalistanis and Tamils and whoever they don't like. And some of them say, oh, well, they're not even Indians. They're Khalistanis, they're Sikhs, they're not Indians. It's like, dude, don't bring in your own Indian understanding here and impose it onto me. Like, you're all from South Asia, okay? Some guy responded, he said, Indian philosophy and religion and music and art is advanced. It's one of the oldest civilizations. Again, being old doesn't prove anything. It depends on what standard you define advanced by, but there is a sophistication to their music. Actually, I've heard some of their music that the guys are playing at work, and it involves strings, similar to a way European music would involve string instruments. I happen to actually kind of like some of it. It's not bad. Endeavour replies, and he says, India is hell on earth, full of dirty, perverted narcissists who shit in the street. Cope some more. He's not incorrect in painting that negative picture. I mean, I did live in India when I was 22 years old in 2008. I lived there for 11 weeks exactly. I was based in New Delhi. But I traveled around the north of the country on the weekends. So I volunteered in a slum, and I lived in a middle-class 4-story apartment neighborhood with maybe a few thousand people. It was like a gated community. So that was relatively clean. But outside that in the streets, you saw a lot of how the air was polluted. Things were burning. Biological material is horrible. The sanitation is horrible in many places. People do keep certain areas clean, but they don't often care about anything beyond their own dwelling or their specific neighborhood. It's also a very feminist country, even for not being a Western country. So there's a feminized aspect to the country. Men tend to be malnourished. The women tend to be plump. This is what I saw. We can just be honest with the rest of the world. Like a lot of it's this dirty place. It's not a place we would want to live. We want them to stay in their countries ideally and not come here, please. But that doesn't mean like we can't recognize that they have had noteworthy achievements as a civilization. Hasta luego, amigos.